You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, we got a returning guest, baby. There's summer, spring, fall, and winter. But there's also another season that folks don't know about on this podcast. It's the season of returning guests, because this is one heck of a guest to have back on the show, baby, because he's back and better than ever, and not better than ever. So just a quick reminder for folks, this gentleman right here, founder and principal of his own consulting group, a best-selling author of 4 books, you heard that right, folks, 4 magical books, U.S. Navy captain, and associate professor of surgery at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences and adjunct faculty at Howard University College of Medicine. That's right, folks, here in the DMV, y'all. And he's also a TED Med Frontline Scholar, TEDx speaker, and alumni of Harvard Medical School's Writers Workshop and the Yale Writers Conference. So let's give it up for the one, the only himself, the good doctor, Dr. Hassan Tetteh. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, Don, I'm doing great. It's a great day to be with you and to be with your audience. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed, baby. That's right. That's right. Double the chocolate is back in the building, baby. He's off the market, ladies. He's got a wife and kids too, y'all. Just let you know. Oh, man. Yes, indeed. It's a second appearance back in the wonderful, sometimes I joke around before recording, danger zone of self-promotion and dad jokes, because you got this new super special awesome book, The Art of Human Care 2.0.
That's right, 2.0. It is the first iteration of the series under the Art of Human Care, under that umbrella and that brand, and very appropriately titled The Art of Human Care for the thing that we have all been dealing with in the last year, for COVID-19. Like, as I mentioned just before we started, the recording here, I was telling you that this one was a labor of love. So it is not necessarily for self-promotion, but to promote the fact that those of us that are among the living have endured quite an ordeal in the last year, and it is meant to really be a source and resource for inspiration, encouragement, and some instruction for how to navigate the days ahead and pretty much emerge out of this pandemic in a better way.
Yeah, you can say that again. Definitely say that again, because I think we're past the new normal, because that ain't happening. Ain't nothing normal anymore.
No, fundamentally, one of the things that was impressed upon me during this pandemic that we are living through is a reminder of something that I have always been interested in. I have been a pupil, someone who's been very interested in, believe it or not, medical history and studying pandemics. I've spent a lot of my years in medicine actually learning about, studying, and researching pandemics. And I never lived through one until now. And so I had all of this information that I had gathered over the years that really informed my perspective in a really meaningful way. And fundamentally, the thing that you just said, which really was my take home from all of that, was this: pandemics fundamentally change the world. There's a before the pandemic, and then there's after the pandemic, and after the pandemic, there is no such thing as the new normal. Everything is different, politically, economically, socially, and technologically. And I appreciated that reading about pandemics, and now to be living through one and appreciating it real time. When you look at those few lenses of the politics, the economics, the social, and the technological, I think it's undeniable that this is definitely history somewhat repeating itself, or certainly rhyming as it did in the previous pandemics, to suggest that, yeah, things are not going to be normal. There is no new normal. There's just going to be new.
Oh man. Well, that's easily going to be a social media quote for this episode, indeed, because it's so darn true. Like, this is definitely new to a lot of people, and it flipped a lot of us on top of our heads, especially in the beginning. It's like someone just walked up, swept our legs from under us. It's like, oh crap, I got to get back up. And a lot of us that are still alive today were able to do just that in one way or another, even though some may have lost employment. Sadly, even more sadly, some have lost loved ones and weren't able to celebrate them in the way they needed to be deserved to be celebrated. It's really just powerful, and it's really good that you're actually sharing this and really getting this once in a lifetime opportunity, because it's a rare occasion where you actually meet someone who's actually been studying pandemics for a lifetime. And heck, even you've even mentioned a couple of them in the beginning of the book. I believe the Black Plague as well being one of the biggest ones, and syphilis and a couple others, and now living through one and still being able to be alive through it. Like, that's definitely a testament, and that shows that God has you here for a good reason and a big reason.
Well, I truly hope so, from your lips to his ears. Yeah, I do hope so. It has not been lost on me that I had, and indeed lost loved ones through this period in time, and I think many of us in healthcare have really, kind of endured this ongoing frustration, fear, and anxiety. A combination of those three feelings and emotion almost simultaneously on a day-to-day basis. Fear, anxiety, and frustration, and I was feeling all of those things. And at the same time, we had lots of family in New York, close aunt that passed away, an uncle that passed away. I write about that as a way of sort of reminding, not only myself, but the readers that, for those of you that have not been impacted, in that kind of visceral, very connected, very deep way of losing a loved one that was very close to you, each one of those numbers, those 500,000 plus and counting now, those are individual lives with an individual story, with a soul, with a legacy that has gone unfulfilled to some extent, and a story that ended, too soon. If you think about the fact that had it not been for the pandemic, those folks would still be here, and enduring that loss at a time when you can't, like you said, visit with people, when folks are in the hospital dying literally in isolation. And then when they do pass, you can't even celebrate their life because, there wasn't a means to do that. And that's what happened to us. You almost don't even get the appropriate closure that one needs and one necessitates to have, a proper mourning. So this is, I think, like you said, something that fundamentally has impacted us in such a way that it does feel akin to having your legs swept up, your legs swept up from underneath you and flipped upside down, and it's trying to figure it all out at the same time.
Yes, indeed, definitely can say that again. And something powerful you said there's the really something that a lot of us desire in life, and that's closure. Like, a lot of us desire it, and in one way or another, sometimes it may be over petty issues, because some folks may have small minds and they want to get closure on petty things. And then, of course, the main thing when it comes to a celebration of life, like not getting that opportunity to really celebrate the times that you had with your loved ones. So, with that in mind, what is probably something else that you've been able to be extra grateful for during this time, in addition to, I guess, being able to survive through all of this in spite of still going through the stress and grief of losing loved ones like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, how much time do we have? What do I have to be grateful for? My goodness. I mean, I think that fundamentally that should be the theme and the mantra, and the the one emotion and one perspective that I think one should have an extreme sense of gratitude for. Gratitude, that in and of itself, the fact that you have survived the pandemic and are healthy, if you are, and if you have been impacted by COVID, whether you had it yourself or had loved ones that have it, looking at each day as sort of an opportunity to sort of move forward in a more deliberate and a more intentional way, I think is a really important thing. So I think, when you talk about what am I grateful for, I'm grateful for so many things, health and fitness, and to be able to, still be above ground and walking. I've had colleagues that I've lost, doctors that have trained me, giants in their profession, respected colleagues that went into the battle, so to speak, in the early days of this pandemic, doing what we do, taking care of patients, and doing it in a way that really was selfless. And in doing so, they succumb and sort of sacrifice the ultimate gift of their own life. So I'm grateful that I'm still here, that I, at the same time, was still able to contribute to taking care of patients, and still am, those that have been impacted. I'm grateful that I've been able to be a source of counsel and advice and encouragement for some of my friends and colleagues that are suffering right now with loss and with sick individuals and members of their family in the hospital. A very good friend of mine, even just this morning, he and I were talking. He unfortunately has his younger brother in the hospital, who's been on a ventilator for weeks now,
Mm.
because of COVID. And he's been dealing with a great tragedy, to try and reconcile how could this happen. It's almost unbearable and unimaginable. And things unfortunately don't look very good for him. And so again, I guess my gratitude comes from the fact that hopefully, some words of encouragement, giving him some advice and some counsel, sharing a perspective or two with him, and reminding him that, his job right now moving forward is to take care of his brother's family, to keep them safe and secure, to make sure no one else in the family gets sick if possible, take care of himself, and to make sure that, if he were to depart, that he has a way of carrying on his brother's legacy in such a meaningful way that he'll never be forgotten or never be lost. So there's a lot to be grateful for. As you can tell, I could go on and on. And if nothing else, I hope that one of the silver linings of this COVID, um, uh, sort of experience that we're all enduring, reminds us of something that you said. If I could quote you, you know, keeping your mind on what matters most. Keeping the main thing the main thing, whatever that main thing is for you. But if this hasn't given you an opportunity to discover your main thing, well, I would impress upon you, then you better get started working on what your main thing is, and keep that first and foremost and center of attention.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And sorry to hear about your colleague and his younger brother. My goodness, that's definitely rough. Hopefully he'll be able to pull out of it. Puffy will be able to pull out of it. One thing about the human mind and the human spirit is that it can be very stubborn. In times like these, that'll definitely pay off. And let's hope it's one of those moments where it does.
You know,
Yes, indeed. And my goodness, yes, indeed. My man's dropping almost like a tennis bracelet jewels already. Like a time to discover what your main thing is. And you have actually quite a few things that probably fall under the one main thing, which is human care and caring for your fellow man and woman, helping them to really feel better and more invigorated. So, since this is your second visit, I always like to ask authors, what major skill have you been working on since the last visit, since skill building is one of the main things that folks have been talking about since this COVID started?
yeah, that's a great question. I think my skill building has been one of resilience and health. I really have been, really focused on that. And early on in the pandemic, I must admit, I certainly was not doing that at all. I had let, lots of things fall off, like many of us,
Oh, yeah.
hard to stay motivated and stay, in the frame of mind of wanting to be fit, and, and with so much going on, it's much easier to just kind of, hibernate into a corner somewhere, sit on the couch, just kind of let the streaming videos just go in front of you to take your attention off of things. But I started to recognize I just wasn't feeling well. I was getting, getting a little heavier. I was just getting, achy, and I didn't have any energy. And that usually happens for me when I stop exercising. And there were two things that kind of happened for me that brought me back into, I think, some semblance of some normalcy for myself, the new for me. And that was, in the depths of despair, so to speak, of having this frustration, this anxiety, and the fear of going into work every day and wondering, like, oh, if I don't get sick, my colleagues are dying and this stuff is really hard to take care of. It's unlike anything that I've seen before. We're not sure what's going on. Again, these are the early days of the pandemic, right? We really had we had a lot more questions than we had answered. We certainly didn't have a vaccine back then. So there was a lot going on. And then at home, worried about bringing anything home to your family as you're going back and forth to the hospital and seeing sick patients is always a big concern. And then not really wanting to do much of anything. You don't want to go outside. You didn't want to, you're certainly not going to be able to socialize with anybody. And so for me, that eliminated one of my great joys, which was running. I was actually training to run for a marathon. And when I saw what was happening, I was like, there's no way in the world we're going to have a marathon. So I just stopped running. A few months later, I started feeling, like someone who just kind of fell off the wagon, and so for me, that was one thing that brought me back some sanity, was just getting up and running every day. And I said, I'm going to commit myself to running at least a mile a day. And that brings me back some joy. And it made every day new for me, because it broke up the mundane and the monotony. And fortunately, I lived in an area where, I could run outside and not be, in proximity with anybody. And that was good. So that was one thing. And then writing about this time, which is, in many ways what created the foundation of the book. I like to journal, and I was recording my emotions. I was recording what I was observing. I was recording how I was feeling. And I was just writing to just, release it. Writing for me has always been one of these things that is a cathartic exercise that helps, to keep the emotions flowing, not inwardly, but outwardly. Sometimes you do have to release things. I think many of our, challenges with behavioral health comes from just keeping things bottled up and not having an outlet for it, whether that outlet is sports or it's, art, or it's writing, or if it's just talking to another human being, which all of which have been, deprived from us, during this time. So it makes it even especially, more important than ever to be able to have that outlet. And so writing was that outlet for me, and running was another. And of course, staying close to friends and family, by phone mostly, and by Zoom and other ways. But that was good to be connected and to just hear what other people were experiencing, and commiserating in some regard with them, but also trying to make sense of what was happening as well. So those were the things I was working on, those were the things. And I think the word to sum up all of that is to build resilience. That's what I've been working on, building resilience during this time, to get through the pandemic and to emerge out of it stronger, and more equipped and able to take life to the next level, if possible.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Resilience, and that's something that's required if you're going to live for a long time. If you're going to need some resilience, and basically you share something that a lot of folks are going through, like a lot of folks that you may see face to face, the guy you may think may be invincible, or the gal who may think she's invincible, like we all had to deal with ourselves and realize, hey, we're actually mortal human beings here, and this is something brand new. And like you said, we have more questions than answers. It's like, oh, mask or no mask? Like, what the heck is this thing? Like, do I go outside and breathe the air and die? Do I stay in the house all day? Like, like what happened to all the Lysol? Like, I can't find Lysol. They took all the TP, and then the dog ate it as punishment. Like, it's all this stuff out here. And just being able to be okay and admitting, like, hey, just being vulnerable like that, because heck, myself too, like, even had an anxiety attack last year, and that's something I never thought I would have. Like, I'm the guy who preaches positive mental attitude, positive mindset, and things like that, and just being able to being open and realize letting folks know, like, hey, like I too have my moments of vulnerability, and you being a doctor is like, hey, they usually try to say, physician, heal thyself so it can heal me, please.
Yeah, right. Well, we as a group, and I say the collective community of those of us in healthcare, I think have really, faced quite the challenges this last year, more so than ever. On the one hand, and I was just reading about this as well. On the one hand, you have folks lauding us as heroes and superheroes and scrubs, and you hear all the clapping and the accolades and laying of honor on you. And at the same time, you have a large, group of our population that, one, don't think this thing is real. Two, they're not practicing any of the measures that we know or have found over the course of the year to be effective in diminishing the spread of this condition. And how do you reconcile that? You almost feel a bit betrayed, and I think that's the sentiment that's definitely been echoed throughout many of our ranks. And yet it's hard because, I think, enter this kind of field with this commitment to want to care, want to help, and want to save lives, and certainly take care of those that are ill and sick. And there's a lot more people ill and sick during these times, but you also want the public to share in the responsibility of keeping the disease at bay and not making it worse. So it's really been a challenge. The article I was reading actually was just published recently. It was in the Washington Post, and it was about a survey that they did about how almost 30% of healthcare providers are thinking about leaving the profession because of their ordeal and their experience and the perspective that they've gained through this time. That's really it's pretty significant that's the sentiment, and I can certainly relate. As I mentioned, that fear, anxiety, and frustration, that was real, still is real, and it was hyper real a few months ago.
Yeah, you could definitely say that again because it's so true. It's like, oh god, it's like, oh man, like 2020 is gonna be my year, 2020 vision, baby. And it's like, oh, I ain't got no 2020 vision. We blind now, buddy.
Like, that definitely contributed to the funk I was in too. I think, like many of us, I mean, you have a new decade on the horizon. The year started great, and then it didn't take long for it to start, going in a different direction. I think, like many of us, I remember this vividly. I had, all of these events planned. You and I visited months back, and I had a new book, and I had all of these. I had the book tour planned. We were going to this state and that city, and I had this event and that event. I was going to do some lectures, and even like I said, I had a marathon plan. And February was coming around. And I started to just see what was going on in the hospitals, and more importantly, what was going on in the rest of the world. And knowing what I knew of pandemics, I was thinking to myself, it's only a matter of time before it comes here. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. And sure enough, March hit us, and like a ton of bricks. I think the first thing that was an indication that the world was about to change for all of us here in the States was the NBA season being canceled. And when that happened, it was a wrap. It was this like a domino effect of cancellations. And then, it didn't take too long after that to just pretty much say, well, I guess I got the rest of the year free. So I'm not going anywhere. There's no trips on the horizon here. I'm going to be here a while at home. It's something we can joke about and laugh about now, but it wasn't laughable back then. Not at all. I mean, that like you said, it definitely has felt like someone pulled a rug from underneath you. I mean, when I can't think of any other time in my life where, universally, everything you had planned, for the foreseeable future was just canceled. Everything. And no indication or hint of when it could come back. Just canceled. You're not going anywhere.
Yep. Yeah, it's like yeah, it's like that bad bully where it's like, oh, and they got it's basically like the Juggernaut and X-Men, and he's got the helmet on. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, can we get this darn helmet off the sucker so he can like mind control the sucker? Like, nah, fam, we keeping the helmet on.
No, no, you're not going nowhere. You stay right here. You are grounded indefinitely.
Oh man, but hey, ain't nothing wrong with being grounded for some parts of your life, especially in this case when you can actually put things into the proper perspective. Because now it's like those are still alive. I can at least use humor as a little bit of medicine to really
Mhm.
help the pain just simmer down a bit from the stuff that we all had to deal with last year and still are dealing with today. Even though vaccines are still out there, it's like, hey, it's like an imperfect thing. It's like, hey, it can protect you, it can give you that armor, but you still have to use common sense and don't get too happy and let your guard down, or you could once again get get your legs swept up from under you. So the buzzword from last year was pivoting, and I believe you've been able to at least pivot to guest on a bunch of shows thanks to your lovely PR agent. I believe Ali Odiepo, if I got her last name right.
Yeah,
If
Ali and I definitely pivoted, like many did, right? It was, well, how do you adjust, right? What do you do? You still have goals, you still have some ambitions, you still have some things you'd like to do in life, and those plans now have to be reconciled, right? They have to be adjusted for the current condition that you're living in. And you need to sort of refocus your perspective, to accommodate the new world that you're living in. And like many of us, that's kind of what we did. And going online certainly was good. I think to myself, again, looking back on all those times when I was reading about and learning about pandemics, those folks didn't have the internet back then. They didn't have the ability to still see individuals. So you can imagine the isolation that they must have gone through. I mean, and you read about it, people wrote about it, people wrote poetry about it, people, you know, they produced fantastic art that just depicted this severe isolation, where you really were sheltered in place. You didn't have an outlet, um, you know, and so that gave me certainly something to be grateful for, that I could still reach others, and I could still reach out to people and still connect with them, albeit in a different way. But to your point of pivoting, it was important to do that, and very helpful, and it was emotionally very helpful as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right, because emotional help is a main thing that folks need to always consider. That's another reason why self
Mhm.
care is preached so much now more than ever in self love, indeed. So, with the skill building of resilience and heck, being able to pivot and adjust, even though the physical multi city tour got canceled, you're still able to do a virtual tour and spread the good word of human care to the masses. What would probably be something that you wish you would have done different now that you have the skills and knowledge now if you were to basically go through the book publishing process again since you're now back for 2.0? And I guess this will probably be best-selling book number 5 once it gets out.
Well, again, from your lips to God's ears, we hope so. I don't know if I would have done anything terribly different. I think that if I had a chance to kind of revisit, I wish I would have acted sooner to get out of the funk. Because
Uh,
I was in a low place for a while, and I'm talking, a couple months. It was really until the summer before I started to sort of emerge from, the dark cloud, if you will, of the frustration, the fear, the anxiety. And again, I carried a lot of that and still do to this day. But at that point, I knew, because unfortunately, I have been uh, you know privy to, both personally and vicariously through my friends and others, and through my profession, of seeing people that are in really dark places, and what can happen when that happens. The self harm, and sort of the destructive behaviors that kind of come with that, that place. So understanding that, I wish I would have, emerged a little bit sooner. But, I think every one of us goes through a process, right? And each one of these moments in time and the days that, we were experiencing and I was experiencing in particular were formative, because each one of them compounded, yet another experience, yet another emotion. And it got me to probably the place where I was like, okay, now I'm really, really, now I'm really, really low. I don't want to go much lower here. So let me start emerging. Let me start, figuring out those things that I can do to build that resilience and to kind of claw my way out, and do so in such a manner that's positive, that's helping others, if possible, helping myself and my family, and try to come out on the other side of this in a really positive way, in a good way, and help people along the way from the perspective that I have. And that was really the purpose of the book. In fact, I remember pretty vividly having a conversation with a gentleman who was an executive coach of mine years ago. And he just reached out, like many people have done over the course of this year, the people that they haven't heard from in a while. One, to make sure they're still alive, probably. And then probably the other thing is just check in, because they themselves are feeling lonely. And he checked in, and it was great. And we connected, and we had a nice little Zoom call. And I was talking to him, and he was really upbeat, and he was really positive, as he always is. I mean, that's what all good coaches do. They look, and he could also tell, though, that I was not in that place. He and I were on two different wavelengths. And he was like, what's wrong? I shared with him what was going on. And, he shared with me with something that was interesting. For him, in his world, COVID had not impacted him at all. And I think that was one of the reasons why he was so upbeat and so positive. He, in fact, he lives in a place, in an area where, at that time, there was no COVID. There were no COVID cases at all. If you could think back to those periods in time where there were these pockets, right? There's these cities that were just, one place that had it, and someplace else had nothing at all, no cases at all. And I realized, I was like, man, he has a totally different perspective. And I think if I had been in his neighborhood and I've been looking around and seeing nothing happening, and then but at the same time watching the news, I would have been, I'd have been perplexed. I'd have been like, I don't get it, like, what's going on? There's nothing happening here. All my neighbors are fine, no one's wearing a mask, we've been socializing, there's no COVID here, nothing to see here. And that's what he was conveying to me. But I was on the other side of the country, with loved ones passing away in New York, with friends hospitalized, with doctors that trained me dying in the hospital. It was like night and day. And that's when I realized, I was like, I need to share this perspective. I need to share this holistic perspective that I have of what I knew from the past, what I know of the past, what I'm experiencing in the present, and what I think the future can be. Because if you look at the pandemics, the good thing about pandemics, if there is a good thing, and we talked a little bit about the silver lining of, individually people discovering what the main thing is, discovering their main thing and focusing on that's definitely a good individual thing that happens. But collectively as a society, we as humans prove our resilience. We've survived so many pandemics, and that's what I wanted to convey, because it was me sort of being, able to look in my, proverbial reflection by talking to someone who I respected as a coach, and him helping me realize that, hey, your perspective is such in a dark place right now. He's in a positive place. And that's just because of the experiences we're just going through right now. But, this, your mind is a powerful thing. So you can change your perspective by changing your mind and what you focus on. So not have me focus on the fear and the anxiety and the frustration, but let's focus on the positive. Let's focus on the fact that, hey, you're here, you're still here. You haven't passed away. You're not sick. You're healthy. Let's do things to keep it that way. Let's go back to running. Let's clear your mind. Let's start writing again. Hey, as a matter of fact, why don't you write a book about this whole experience? You just wrote something on this great topic of humanity and human care. There all of those principles of purpose, of personalization, of partnerships, those are exactly the essential themes and things that you need right now in this pandemic. So it was that conversation, having that perspective, of someone else who's kind of living in a different world, so to speak, and sort of reflecting upon my experience and saying to myself, I've already wrote about some of the things that would be very effective, very essential, very helpful during this time. Let's repurpose that theme and let's apply it to COVID. And then, let's take your perspective that you have of history, of your current, experience and what you know of humanity's ability to be resilient and to survive pandemics and to survive tragedy and to survive devastation, and write about that in an inspirational work. And then, oh, by the way, let's infuse art into it, because art is the universal language, right? That heals. It speaks to your soul. I mean, you can't be a human being and not be moved by some kind of art. Now, it may be different art forms for different individuals, whether it's dance, it's song, it's poetry, it's visual, but everyone is moved by art, and I think that it was this kind of realization that I think helped to build a lot of resilience and produce the work that we're talking about now, which is the art of human care for COVID-19.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And that's the beautiful thing about art being a universal language because it's featured in book number 2 as well.
Indeed. Oh, and I mean, I had the fortune, God's grace, divine intervention, or I Forrest Gumped my way into meeting some outstanding artists that were so impactful. This process for both of these books has been interesting, right? Because the artists I work with, they'll say, "Oh, so send me your manuscript," and I'm like, "Well, send me your art." Like,
Mm-hmm.
because in like many artists will say, the art is in my mind, it's in my head, but everyone's like, well, we want to see it though, and when you're writing a book, you got to say, well, you can't tell your publisher and your editor, yeah, it's in my head. It was like, no. You
You'll get
need to get
rejected
it.
quicker that way.
You need to get it out of your head and get it onto paper so we can see it. And so there was this dynamic tension going on. It happened in the first book, so I knew that it happened in the first book and it worked out. But here I was dealing with new artists and a new process and a new time, and I did have a lot of the elements in my head, truth be told, but I also had some of it written down, and it became this synergy, right? I would see the art, and the art inspired some of my words. It changed some of the stories. It helped me think of a different way to frame or to tell, a particular perspective that I was trying to share. And in turn, I believe the words that I was now, recounting and building upon and maturing help the artist, develop the next piece. And it was this back and forth. It was this yin and yang. It was this, this great synergy. And then it all kind of came together. And it's this process that there's something that I really enjoy, and it becomes an all immersive kind of process, because as you can imagine, you feel obligated to the artist, and I hope the artist feels obligated, to me, to have this, this work kind of come to fruition in such a way that it does speak to people, and it does move them, and it brings emotions that are strong, and that was exactly what happened. I've shown the art within the book, of course, to my biggest critic, my wife, but she's good because she'll tell the truth, right? And she said the art is dark, and but
Mm.
she didn't say it in a bad way. She just said it's dark, and I said, oh, that's good. It's eliciting an emotion, like a powerful one. It's really dark, but you could tell it hit her. And I showed it to someone else, and they're like, this is so powerful. It's so good. They didn't say dark. They said it was so powerful, so good. And I'm like, wow, that's great. and as I started to have that process with others, no one was wishy-washy about how they felt about it, which was good. I felt like that was powerful. That was a testament to tell me that what we were sharing, what we were producing was on another level. There was no wishy-washy. No one was like, I don't know. It's not giving me any emotions. Well, we don't want that. We want you to have an emotion. That's what art is supposed to do. Art is a universal language, because art in its essence, and I've said this before, is a means to communicate. That's what it is. All it is a means to communicate. That's why it's the universal language, because it could be a picture and you show it to someone who doesn't speak English, and they have an emotion. It communicates something to them. And that was what I was getting as feedback. I was like, this art is communicating to people. So now it's my job to make sure my words are equally as powerful in communicating to people, what's happening in our time, so that they can have a perspective, they can have an outlook, and more importantly, perhaps beyond all of that, is that they can have some inspiration for emerging out of this in a better way.
Oh yeah, I could definitely say that again. And you're so right. It's like the right photo with the or the right piece of artwork will definitely elicit powerful emotions. Indeed, and that's definitely what you want to go for, and it's definitely something that we all should embrace. So, speaking of excitement and inspiration and powerful emotions, what are three things that you're excited about for the rest of 2021?
What are three things I'm excited about? Well, running, again, running, writing, and building relationships. I think those are the three things I would say I'm excited about. I think that what's going to happen, as we continue to, kind of re-engage with each other, is I think people are going to have more meaningful conversations. I think people are going to get better connected. Now, some people are going to, gonna, gonna be split asunder, which is probably something they realized, when they were doing that introspection of thinking about what the main thing is. And some people realize, hey, this person that's in my life is not the main thing, and they moved on, which is fine. I mean, that's just the human condition, but I think for us, the large majority of folks are going to, I think, find deeper connections with people, because in the isolation that we've had, I think we've really appreciated, again, something about the human condition, and that is that we are very social beings. It's not normal for humans to sort of be isolated and to be, by themselves. And that's, I think, been proven time and time again, right? That's why tribes developed. That's why people, formed clans, because it was safety in numbers. It was beneficial. It was, contributing to health and longevity and resilience. And I think this period in time, even though we had artificial means of connecting with people, I think there's going to be a return to that in a really deep and meaningful way, hopefully. And I hope those connections lead to some really powerful bonds that are formed, and partnerships. And I think, they embody the three tenets. Essentially, I said running, writing, and building relationships. So those kind of embody the purpose, the personalization, and the partnerships. I think that's what's going to happen. My purpose is found in my running, because it gives me time to think and consider and prioritize what's important. When I have that alone time and I get into a nice flow, personalization is really important, and that's what I try and write about. I try and journal and think about those things that are important. I document what I'm grateful for, on a daily basis. And like I said, the building relationships, I think those are gonna lead to, stronger, more mature, and I think really powerful partnerships, as those relationships are built. And I think there's going to be incredible things that come out of it. And we have not even begun or began to see the great art that's going to emerge from this time. There are people out there right now that have made and are creating and have created some powerful things. Whether it be song, whether it be dance, whether it be the next Tony Award-winning play or the next Emmy or the next Oscar. Those people are out there. They've been working. Some people have really been working, and those that have had a block during this time, they're going to emerge out of this, and they're going to have these experiences from being locked down and being stifled to really just flow, and unleash it. And I think that's going to be something great for all of us to marvel at and appreciate.
Ah, yes indeed, yes indeed. That's right. The next great piece of art is waiting to appear. Or should I say, the next great bomb of art. Because it's going to be an explosion, baby. A creativity explosion. That's right.
And that's what happened after every pandemic. I mean, the Renaissance is said to be born out of the Black Plague, and that's just one example. You go back in time, and the Roaring Twenties, kind of happened right after our bout with the Spanish flu and influenza. So, yeah, I think our time is coming. I think history doesn't repeat itself. It certainly rhymes. I think there's a lot of rhyming that's going to be happening here if you look on the horizon.
Yes, sir, indeed. Yes, sir, indeed. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive on round 2. And that is, if you were called to give the final keynote speech of your life that the entire world would hear, literally the entire world, all 8 billion people in the world, like no smartphones, actually, if they had smartphones, they would be hearing and seeing you speak, man, for generations to come. What would that message be, and what would the main points of that message entail?
I would have to say the main message would be, because he lived, the world is a better place. That would be the main message. The main message would be, because Hassan Tetteh lived, the world is a better place. He was engaged with life. He embodied purpose. He embodied personalization, and he did that in the delivery of human care to others. And he was all about building partnerships, because he recognized that with building partnerships, you could make the world a better place. You can do great things. You can make the impossible possible. And through those things, and through living a life of purpose, of personalization and partnerships, because he lived and because he shared those instructions and those tools with others, the world is a better place.
Woo! There we go, the mic drop, baby. That's right. Yes, indeed. That's right, indeed. Personified excellence, baby. That's right. That's right. And he cared about people, built some powerful partnerships, baby. That's right. Them 8-pack ab level partnerships, baby.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, for those who want to maybe one day get to that 8-pack ab level of partnerships with the good doctor himself and cop all of his wonderful books and keep up with all the wonderful work you're doing, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you, my friend?
So we have 2 websites that you could do that at, artofhumancare.com, Art of Human Care, all one word, ARTOV, humancare.com, and drtetteh.com. It's DOCTOR. My last name is TETTEH.com. The Art of Human Care website was just launched. We're really excited about it. We've been working on that for many months with some really talented people. And it has a gallery of art from all the books that are written so far, and the book that's actually forthcoming after this one, that's on artificial intelligence. So it's really giving an insight and a perspective that I think will really resonate with people. And I hope folks will visit, spend some time looking at the art, and let it communicate to you, let it talk to you, let it speak to you, let it inspire you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Head over to those wonderful websites, buy hundreds of copies of Dr. Hassan's books, indeed. Share with your friends, share with your family, share with some penguins, some camels, share with some cucumbers, baby. So that way, when you put this book next to a cucumber, you be like, this book is cooler than that cucumber, baby. and share with the rest of the world, because folks need to know that human care is still out there, and it's something that we need the most, because the new renaissance is coming, baby. That's right, the new renaissance is coming. Yes, indeed. So, any parting words before we close up shop, my friend?
I would just say one thing, man. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for, the lives that you have helped influence and the people that you help through your platform. I just say thank you.
How's it going, you super special, awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode. Heck, even shoot myself or the guest an email and let them know what you liked most about this interview so that way they can stay inspired to keep pushing out great work.